Welcome to the Tufts Graduate School of Arts and Sciences Graduate Student Speaker Series, or GS4. So this is our third GS4 speaker series. And today it is my pleasure to introduce Apittha Unahalekhaka from the Department of Child Study and Human Development. AIM will give her presentation and will allow a few minutes at the end for questions. And AIM, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Maddie. So hi, everyone. I'm AIM. And then, okay, let me share my screen. So I'm a going on to second year PhD student in child study and human development. And then I'm working under DevTech research group. And today I'll be talking about my proposed research, which I really hope that I will be able to collect data in this coming spring term. So my project, it's going to be we're going to look at the collaboration between kids when they're creating their coding projects together. And in a way, it's a way to express creativity through the process. And why is these 3 C's important? It's because we're currently living in the world that is very highly technological, and then technology is like highly integrated into our lives, and it starts very early on. So coding has become a very important skills for little kids to learn going forward. And at the same time, it's also important for them to learn these skills such as collaboration and creativity for them to be able to create meaningful connections and relationship with the people around them and then around the people in the world around them. So that is why collaboration, coding, and creativity are important. And so now I'll be talking about the background information of each C, and afterwards I'll be talking about my research design. So first of all, coding. So what is ScratchJr? So as I mentioned at the beginning, that I'm looking at the collaboration when kids are creating this coding project, which is through ScratchJr. It's a free app for you to download on tablet for young kids around 5 to 7. It was developed by DevTech, Lifelong Kindergarten, and Playful Invention Company. And as you can see on the right-hand side right here, so ScratchJr has a coding language that is block-based programming, where you can drag each coding block right down here and then create a coding script to run the character. So ScratchJr allows kids to create animated stories as well as games. And from 2016 until now, there has been almost 50 million projects created worldwide where kids created their own projects. So I want to show you an example of what real ScratchJr projects look like. So I combine a few projects because they're quite short. I combine the different types of projects for you to see. So this is the first one, quite simple. And this one has more settings. It has jumping cat and jumping mushrooms. And then the next one, the cat is not moving, but then this kid drew their own stars and then it was like twinkling. This one requires a higher coding concepts where you need to coordinate all the characters to move at the same time. And then this is the last project, which doesn't have any coding blocks, as you can see around here. So that's why it's static. So it's like more like a collage, and then it has 21 cats with different colors. So why coding starts in early childhood, right? So according to research, kids can start acquiring coding concepts since they're 4 years old. And then, so coding teaches computational thinking, which is important for everyday life. So for example, one of the computational thinking concept is modularity, which is basically it's like breaking complex tasks into like smaller chunks, right? And then how do you transfer it into real life? For an example, if you're teaching kids how to like getting like dressed up on their own, it can be a complex task for them. It's like if it's the first time for them, so you might teach them to maybe wear the shirt first and then wear the pants and then maybe socks and shoes like later. So like breaking them into smaller chunks. And coding is also important because it is a language or tools for kids to express their ideas and feelings through creating personally meaningful projects. And by creating these meaningful projects, this is where collaboration can happen. So collaboration also starts very early on. So it's a process of working together to reach the same end goal. And humans are born sociable, and then we need cooperation to survive, right? So very early on, like 6 weeks, like toddlers are 6 weeks old, they start to smile socially at others. And then young kids are just like motivated to help and then share with others. By around like a year and a half, kids start to be able to like have joint attention with others. And by 2 to 3 years old, the evidence of collaboration became like more clear. So they understand the individual roles of like themselves and like others. And then they also are able to like help others also share more equally. And collaboration, it's important for learning. It's because, as Vygotsky has mentioned, that social interaction is important for cognitive development. So it is when like a young kid is able to actively collaborate and then learn with a more capable individual, which is when like learning occurs. But then the problem is that not all collaboration results in learning gains because there's so many factors involved, such as like age, gender, motivation, behavior. There are so many factors involved. But then what research has found is that the key factor to leading to learning gains from collaboration is for you to have an active verbal communication with someone. And especially when this someone has like a different perspective they can offer to the other. So it can be different knowledge, skills, and like ideas or viewpoints. So you might be wondering then, how do we group kids in like a teamwork for a group work in a classroom? So there are many studies done on looking at the composition, the group formation types, and then they found many results, such as they found that close friends tend to have higher collaboration while also having like higher creativity in the end result that they created. And then like mixed ability team also results in the higher learning gains at the end. So mixed ability as in maybe a kid that is like has a higher ability with a kid that is paired with a kid that's like with a lower ability. And then the next one is that for this one, they found that grouping by ability, it's better than letting kids like self-select it or letting teachers select it, depending on like how well they work together. And all of these studies were done in, so not in early childhood, but then like later in elementary, like an upper elementary class. So collaboration leads to creativity, which creativity has like many definitions out there, but then the most common definition is that it is a thinking process where you can come up with something new and useful as defined by like the social context. So creativity, it's related to life success and satisfaction because it's able to, once you have creativity or like new ways to think, you're likely to be able to like do more problem solving. And then it also helps with like emotion regulation. You're able to adapt better to like unexpected situations in life. And then it also leads to leadership later on in life, in workplace. And in order to have creativity, it is important for it's important for the person to be interacting with the environment. So for an example, it is found that once kids get to work together with peers and create projects that they are passionate in, it is when creative learning occurs. And here comes my proposed study, which I'm interested to look at coding, collaboration, and creativity in younger kids, so my study objective is to better understand how collaboration is related to the learning outcome, which in this case, I will be looking at the ScratchJr coding projects. So how collaboration is related to coding concepts and creativity in the project. And then the second objective is to look at how group formation is related to collaboration and these two learning outcomes. And then the group formation that I'm interested in, it's the self-selection, teacher selection, and competency-based. So self-selection is more likely that it would be kids that it would be like friendship-based. They might be picking their team according to who they're like comfortable with. And then teacher selection can be teacher selection on how well kids work together. And then the last one, it's based on their competency. So my first research question is to look at the difference in collaboration level across group formation that I just explained. And the second research question is whether collaboration can predict for the project scores, which has two components, as I explained earlier, the coding concepts and creativity. And I want to take group formation types, average literacy score, and then average coding scores into account, because literacy and coding scores is related to the outcome, the outcome, as well as like the collaboration, the ability for kids to collaborate. And then the last research question is to see whether the relationship between collaboration and project scores, so whether this relationship would differ across group with different formation types. So these three formation types. And then my hypothesis is that so there would be higher collaboration in self-selected group than non-self-selected groups. And then higher project score is related to higher collaboration levels. And then lastly, groups that are non-selected, so it's likely that they're like less, they're like acquaintances and less of like a close friends. Then once they have collaboration, it would be related to like a higher project scores. So my participants would be students from two schools in the Norfolk public schools in Virginia, and it'll be in the kindergarten and grade 1 class with sample size of around 19 groups, and there should be around like 3 students per group. So the measures that we'll be looking, firstly, it's the project rubric, because I'll be looking at ScratchJr project. I'll be looking at the collaboration in their classroom, so it'll be a videotape. And then I'll be looking at the group formation type, which I would ask the teacher. And then lastly, students' literacy and coding scores. So for the first measurement, it's the ScratchJr rubric, which would be split into 2 components, the coding concepts and creativity. And in order to come up with this rubric, it was adapted and developed from previous literature on ScratchJr as well as Scratch, which is like similar to ScratchJr, but for like older kids. And then the creativity comes from the creative product scale, which was tested with young kids before. So this is an example of what the rubric looks like for the coding concept. So it would be broken down into 4 different scores. depending on the competency levels. And in order to measure the collaboration, so we'll be looking at two components, which is the verbal and then the nonverbal. As I've mentioned earlier, that verbal communication is something that's very important for collaboration. So I'll be looking at whether kids are contributing to one another's ideas or verbal, and then the nonverbal would be whether they're coordinated in their actions. And this is my last slide, which is a procedure. So this will take place in the spring term, this coming spring term. So it will be at a, so the data will be collected on the, so what is happening is that there will be a 12 weeks of like coding, ScratchJr coding with kids in the school. And then what we'll do is that on the last day, which is the day that they're creating their final project, we'll be doing class observations, so 15 minutes observation per group, and then we'll be collecting final projects from each team, as well as collecting teacher responses on their types of group formation. And that's the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you, my lab, DevTech, and then all the my awesome lab mates, my advisor, and everyone else. Thank you. So I'm very open for any suggestion and feedback or questions that you have.
If anyone has any questions, we have a small enough group where you can just unmute yourself, then you can ask the questions verbally.
I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Can you hear me? This
Yes.
is Mary Davis. I'm from UEP. Excellent presentation. I enjoyed listening to it. One thing that occurred to me, you talked a lot about the evidence suggesting the benefits of coding, but I'm wondering how well it works for kids that are developmentally delayed. So, for example, when you were talking about the complex reasoning, you know, the coding allows them to kind of build, here's this step and this step. Well, you know, I have a daughter who has pretty severe developmental needs, and that's one of her biggest kind of lagging skills, right? She can't, the word problems, when you have to do this, then this, she can do about 1 or 2 steps, 3, 4, and 5. But so I didn't see anything in your slides about how coding might bring particularly challenged kids up, not just the average kid, and make them better at complex reasoning, but what's the evidence around special needs and coding?
That's a very good question that I think there is not much research done in this area, and then I think there should be more research, which to my knowledge, I've never came across any studies, but then I'll look into it and I can get back to you. And
hi, can I ask a question?
sure.
So thanks for this presentation. This was really informative about your study. I wonder, you talked about how you're going to select 15-minute increments to observe their collaboration. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you'll select those 15 minutes and how you'll make sure that they're comparable across groups.
So what we're thinking is that because each session would last around 45 minutes. So we're thinking about collecting, so 45 minutes, we're collecting the middle 15 minutes of each session. So it would be 15 and 15, and then we would be leaving some times at the beginning and at the end.
Thank you.
Hi, great. Thank you so much for the talk. It's really lovely, and I'm so looking forward to the study. I think it's going to be exciting. One thing that I was wondering, when you talked about the collaboration and the verbal and nonverbal, I don't know if you could go back to that slide. And yeah, so I wonder, so verbal contents, so basically so is that something that you're doing while you're there, or is it something that you're doing with the recordings later?
Yep.
Because I can imagine this can be quite difficult to decide, like on the fly, oh, was that like a contribution to, so this is something that you will do with the recordings, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So it'll be recorded, and then we'll be coding according to the what we see and what we hear.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I was thinking about while looking at this is, so your ScratchJr, because you're looking, so your outcome is the ScratchJr project, right? So that is like a, is it altogether like between 0 and 4 points, or what's like the maximum number of scores that the kids can get for a project?
Right. So it'd be, so at the end, there'll be a final score calculating from each categories.
Okay. Yeah. So that would be quite, so I'm just thinking maybe because you're looking at the correlation, and if you have only up to, so kids can only get up to 3 points for collaboration. I wonder whether maybe the variance may be a little bit low. So if you've got, let's say you can get up to whatever, 24 points for the project.
Yep.
But the variance in the in the collaboration is like only around, it's just because it's just a scale of 3 or something. So, but I can also imagine that this is something that will, when you first look at it, you kind of find out what you can do with a collaboration, whether there are other, whether you want to broaden it or not. So at this point, I've never done something like this. So I wish this is one thought that I had. So,
right. Thank you.
But yeah, no, that's really cool stuff. Thank you.
Aim, great job.
Thank you.
And I have a question. Have you thought about, well, you and I talked, but I want you to talk to everyone. What about control groups? Have you thought about how might be the activity of coding different or similar and collaborating while coding when there's only one tablet that kids are sharing versus an activity of collaboration that involves other, painting, for example, with multiple crayons in one piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yep. I think it'll be very different. So I think it will be one of the factors that we should control for, whether the kids are using individual iPads or if they're sharing one iPad across like many kids.
So are you thinking of using control group, or what are your thoughts here?
I think maybe I will include it as one of the covariate, as in whether how many iPads, how many kids per. Okay, sorry. So I think what I'll do is that I'll use it as a covariate, as in make it a categorical variable, whether it was the iPad was shared or if it was like individually used.
Great, thanks.
Do we have any other questions? All right, well, Aim, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you everybody for attending. So I'll put this on YouTube, so this can be accessed, this recording, at any time. So we'll send you the links. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending.